This would be the perfect place for a modern-day Wall Street.
Today, I want to talk to my practicing African Americans or Black Americans about a city here in America called East St. Louis, Illinois. Now, first, let me get something clear. East St. Louis is not the same as the city St. Louis. They are two different cities in two different states. St. Louis is in Missouri and East St. Louis is in Illinois. But they sit directly across from each other, separated by the Mississippi River. And the reason why I want to talk about East St. Louis is because I believe this city represents something bigger than what most people see when you look at it today. When most people hear about East St. Louis, they may think about poverty, crime, abandoned buildings, population decline, or a city that has been forgotten. But I want to look at it from a different angle. I want to talk about what East St. Louis could become. But before we can talk about the future of East St. Louis, we have to understand its past and its present. So bear with me. This video is really not about being stuck in the past, and it's only partly about the present. My main focus is on the future of East St. Louis, and whether this city could become a modern-day Black Wall Street for serious practicing Black people who are tired of living in a hateful and racist atmosphere and are ready to build something different. Now, of course, you could throw a dart at the map of the United States, go back through history, and you're going to find something that happened that was not favorable to African Americans. That's just how deep racism runs in this country. And once I started researching East St. Louis, the history immediately showed up. So let's take a quick history lesson. East St. Louis was originally known as Illinois Town. Its early development goes back to around 1797 when Captain James Piggott established a ferry service across the Mississippi River. That ferry service helped connect the Illinois side of the river to what would become St. Louis on the Missouri side. From the very beginning, this area had importance because of transportation, trade, and location. It was sitting along of one of the most important rivers in America. The town later incorporated in 1859, and on April 1st, 1861, it was officially renamed East St. Louis. Now, when we talk about Black people in East St. Louis, we have to understand that Black people were not always there in large numbers. Illinois became a state in 1818, and its constitution officially prohibited slavery. But that does not mean that Black people were completely free from exploitation in Illinois. Some forms of bondage, including indentured servitude, continued legally and illegally into the late 1800s. So while East St. Louis was not a major slavery center like places in the Deep South, Black people in Illinois still had to deal with systems of control, labor exploitation, and racial oppression. The large-scale migration of African Americans into East St. Louis really began during the Great Migration, when Black people started leaving the South in large numbers to escape Jim Crow, racial terror, poverty, and limited opportunity. By 1910, East St. Louis already had around 6,000 residents, which was about 10% of the city's population at the time. But between 1916 and 1917, that number grew rapidly. Around 10,000 to 12,000 more Black migrants came to East St. Louis, many of them from the rural South, looking for industrial jobs and better wages. By 1917, the Black population of East St. Louis had grown to around 20,000 people, while the total city population was approaching 100,000. And that's where we begin to see the problem. Because when Black people started coming to East St. Louis for work, opportunity, and a better life, white workers and white power structures saw them as a threat. Black people were being used by some companies as strike breakers, but beyond that, there was also fear of black political growth, black labor growth, and black population growth. And that tension helped lead to one of the worst racial massacres in American history, the East St. Louis Massacre of 1917. White mobs attacked black residents, black homes were burned, black people were beaten, shot, unalived, families were driven from their homes. Some reports list the official death toll in the dozens, while other historians believe that the real number was much higher. This was not just a riot, this was racial terrorism. And it is important to understand that East St. Louis was not destroyed because black people were doing nothing. It was attacked during a time when black people were migrating, working, growing in numbers, and trying to improve their condition. That matters because when we talk about creating a modern black Wall Street, people usually think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they should. But East St. Louis also belongs in that conversation. It is part of the history of black people trying to build, trying to work, trying to survive, and then being met with violence, hatred, and destruction. But here's where I want to shift the conversation. East St. Louis is not just a place of tragedy. East St. Louis could also be a place of opportunity. During the 1950s, East St. Louis's population had stabilized at just above 80,000 people. It was an industrial city. It had jobs, railroads, factories, businesses, and economic activity. But over the decades, the city has declined. Industries left. Jobs disappeared. People moved away. The tax base shrank. Buildings were abandoned, and the population dropped dramatically. Today, East St. Louis has fewer than 20,000 residents, with a black demographic of 93%. And while some people may only see that as a sign of failure, I see something else. I see room. I see land. I see abandoned properties. I see a city with a history, location, and potential. I see a place where a serious, organized, disciplined group of black people could possibly create something new. And that brings me to the real point of this video. What if we created a cooperative? Not just a conversation, not just a hashtag, not just another boycott that lasts a few weeks or months and then fades away. I'm talking about a serious cooperative of at least 25,000 black people, African Americans, Africans in America, and other black people who are like-minded, disciplined, and ready to invest into the future. Let's say 25,000 people invested $3,000 each. That would create $75 million in starting capital. Now, the goal would not be for everybody just to run to East St. Louis and randomly buy properties one at a time. That would be a mistake. Because if 10 people go to buy property one week, and then 10 more go the next week, and then 20 more go after that, the real estate market is going to notice, sellers are going to notice, investors are going to notice, and every time another small group comes and try to buy, the prices are going to rise. So instead of buying randomly, the cooperative would negotiate as one body. We would look for abandoned, dilapidated, neglected, or underused properties that could be purchased in bulk. We would buy strategically, not emotionally. We could consolidate properties in a specific area so that we're not scattered all over the city with no real power. The goal would be to purchase as a group, negotiate as a group, build as a group, and protect the value as a group. That is how you avoid being plagued by speculation. That is how you create leverage. That is how you begin building a modern black Wall Street. But I want to be clear. This is not about everybody quitting their job tomorrow and moving to East St. Louis with no plan. That would not make sense. Most black people cannot just pick up and move to a city where they do not already have a job, income, housing, and a support system. So this plan has to be realistic. That is why I am focusing on people within an 800-mile radius of East St. Louis. We will be looking for people close enough to drive there, contribute, work, and still return home. This could include people from cities like St. Louis, Chicago, Indianapolis, Louisville, Cincinnati, Columbus, Memphis, Nashville, Birmingham, Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, Kansas City, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, Little Rock, and other cities within range. Some people may already be there. Some people may only be 2 or 3 hours away. They may be able to come more often, and here is how. We would use a rotational system. Everybody does not have to go every weekend. If we had 25,000 people, maybe 5,000 people go one weekend, and then a different 5,000 goes the next weekend, and another group goes the third weekend, then another group goes the fourth weekend. That means a person may only have to take one day off of work per month. They could leave after work on a Thursday, drive to East St. Louis, work Friday and Saturday, and then travel back Sunday so they could be back at work for Monday. That's exactly why the rotation matters. You do not need 52 vacation days to contribute to a 52-week rebuilding effort. If the cooperative is organized correctly, your contribution could be scheduled. Your time could be used efficiently. Your sacrifice could fit into your real life. But yes, sacrifice would still be required. And that's where people have to ask themselves the real question. Do you want to use your vacation days to enjoy freedom for a few days and then come back to the same racist environment you have no control over? Or are you willing to use some of those days to help build a place where your children, your family, your business, your future has more control? This movement would not be for everybody. It would not be for people who want comfort without sacrifice. It would not be for people who want ownership but do not want to invest. It would not be for people who want freedom but do not want to work. It would be for people who are serious enough to contribute financially, physically, mentally, and strategically. The first wave would have to be builders and those willing to learn how to build. The first wave would have to be people with long-term vision. The first wave would have to be people who understand that nothing great is easy. Some people would not want to join until the homes are fixed, the businesses are open, and the streets look better, and the city feels safer. And that's fine. They can come later. They can rent from the people who built. They can shop at the businesses that were created. They can lease space. They can enjoy the environment once it is established. But the builders should be the owners. The people who sacrifice early should benefit early. That's not unfair. That's economics. And that is something that black people must understand if we are serious about power. Power does not come from complaining. Power comes from land. Power comes from ownership. Power comes from organization. Power comes from political influence. And in a city with fewer than 20,000 residents, a cooperative of 25,000 people could change everything. If that cooperative voted together, invested together, attended city meetings together, ran candidates together, supported businesses together, and controlled property together, it would reshape the political landscape of East St. Louis. That is the power of concentration. When we are scattered, we are easy to ignore. When we are organized, we become impossible to ignore. The goal is to revive a city. The goal is to create Black-led economic zones where people can build homes, businesses, schools, trade programs, grocery stores, restaurants, construction companies, media platforms, healthcare centers, and financial institutions that actually serve the community. This is not just about East St. Louis. This is about a model. If it works there, then later other branches could be created in other parts of the country. But we have to start somewhere. We have to prove that we can organize one serious branch first, and East St. Louis may be that place. A city with deep black history, a city with painful racial history, a city with a population that has declined, a city with abandoned property, a city located near major transportation routes, a city close enough to people within an 800-mile radius to participate, a city where 25,000 organized black people would have real political and economic influence. That is why I'm talking about East St. Louis. Not because it's perfect, but because it's possible. And at this point, black people have to stop asking for the perfect conditions before we build. Perfect conditions are not coming. The question is whether we are serious enough to build under difficult conditions. The question is whether we are serious enough to sacrifice. The question is whether we are serious enough to stop reacting and start planning. East St. Louis could remain a symbol of decline, or it could become a symbol of rebirth. It could become a modern Black Wall Street. Not one built by begging, not one built by waiting, not one built by asking people who ate us to finally treat us fairly, but one built by black people who decided that their future was worth more than comfort. 25,000 black people, $3,000 each, $75 million in starting capital, bulk property acquisition, rotational labor, sweat equity, financial equity, political unity, long-term vision. East St. Louis, a modern Black Wall Street, built by us, owned by us, protected by us, for the future of us. And this is where I want to bring the conversation back to you. Because everything that I've laid out in this video is not me saying that I already have the answer. I do not. This is not me saying the cooperative is already formed. It is not. This is not me saying East St. Louis is guaranteed to be the final answer. What I'm saying is that East St. Louis is a real place with real history, real decline, real location, real available spaces, and real potential. And if we are serious about creating a modern day Black Wall Street, then at some point we have to stop only talking about the idea and start investigating what it could really actually take. Now let me also clarify the numbers before anybody misunderstands me. When I say 25,000 people, I am not saying that that is the final goal. 25,000 serious people will let me know that there is enough interest to move forward and take the next step, but that would be the minimum sign that I'm not just thinking about something myself. But the real number I would like to see is closer to 60,000 founders. Not 60,000 people later, not 60,000 people after everything is already built. I'm talking about 60,000 people who come at the beginning as founders, investors, builders, planners, and members of the cooperative. Because that number matters. Because if 60,000 people contributed 3,000 each, that would be 180 million in starting capital. That's a completely different level of buying power. That is a completely different level of negotiating power. That is a completely different level of protection against outside speculation. Because if we move too small, the market is going to notice. The sellers are going to notice. Investors are going to notice. Speculators are going to notice. And if they see organized black people moving with a plan, some of them may try to buy up the remaining opportunity before we can. That's why moving as a cooperative matters. That is why numbers matter. That is why timing matters. But before any of that can happen, we have to find out if the interest is real. So here's what I'm asking from you. If you believe this idea is worth investigating further, I need you to show it. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me if East St. Louis is worth looking into deeper. Tell me if you would be interested in being part of a cooperative like this. Tell me if you are within an 800-mile radius. Tell me if you would be willing to help start the planning conversation. Because if this is going to become real, it cannot be built by one person. And let me be honest with you, I am not a rich man. I am an average person. I work, I have bills, I struggle from paycheck to paycheck just like many of us do. So if you want me to keep digging into this, if you want me to research it more seriously, if you want me to even possibly travel to East St. Louis, film what's actually there, talk about what the city actually looks like, show the abandoned areas, show the opportunities, show the risk, show what the possibilities really are, then support the video. The support on this video matters. The likes matters. The shares matters. The subscriptions matters. The watch time matters. Not just because of the algorithm, but because it lets me know that people are serious enough for me to keep putting time, energy, and resources into the investigation. If people are truly interested, this video should not sit quiet. This video should have activity. This conversation should move. So I'm asking you directly, do you want me to continue? Do you want me to research the legal steps? Do you want me to look into what it takes to form a cooperative? Do you want me to look deeper into East St. Louis itself? Do you want me to eventually go there and document what is really on the ground? And do you believe that 60,000 serious founders can come together and create a modern day Black Wall Street? East St. Louis could be the first example, but it does not have to be the last. So the question is simple. Are we serious or are we just talking? This is the man that they call TCan, and thank you for tuning in to Royal Black. And until next time.